In kindergarten, you and your friend used to take his portable TV with the long antennas, and you'd watch Power Rangers under the desk when no one was watching. You were also a fan of Cartoon Network and Nick at Night, and of course, the Andy Griffith Show, which I was as well. How do you compare the content from the 1990s to what we're watching today?
Man, I can't believe you remember that anecdote. That was so. First off, the Power Rangers, the when the Green Ranger came out. Do you remember? And he turned into the
Yep.
White Ranger. Like,
Yep.
come on, that was good storytelling. That was a good arc. Jason was his name. um, yeah, man. That's a huge thing that I think about all the time is the type of things. First off, I don't think I just said I loved the Power Rangers. I don't think it was good for me to be watching that stuff as a kid. I don't think a lot of the stuff on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and all the cartoon, like all that, I don't think all that stuff was good for me. And I think it's only gotten worse in terms of the frenetic pacing, the lights, the colors, the noise, the commercial interruptions, the way that the messaging that all of these types of shows and content and media have for our kids. So it's a big thing that it took me a long time to wrestle with and realize, there's really no reason for kids to be getting advertised to and for them to be sucking down hours of content and media every single day. It probably wasn't good for me. It's only gotten worse. And so it's something that I'm really mindful of with my own kids. And it's a huge part of the vision that I'm trying to build here online.
Yeah, I'm very careful with my feed. People complain about, oh, there's so much poison on social media and all that. It's like, yeah, I mean, but you curate your own content. The algorithm feeds you what you want and what you say you like. So I'm very intentional about that. I almost think of it as like kind of brainwashing myself with positivity and just pushing big dreams on myself and other people that have done it and show that it's possible. You're a perfect example of that. I know there's a book that you listen to when you work out called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's a lot about the human self-image and how you talk to yourself. Can you expand on that a little bit, like with the messages on social media, how we can be a little more proactive and protect our mindset?
Yeah, Psycho-Cybernetics. It's funny, man. Everyone always asks me like what books I recommend, and I don't have time to freaking sit here and read. Like I'm not I'm not out here. I don't read anymore. I read a lot. There was a period in my life where I read a lot. It was before I started my business, and I was still working at my 9 to 5. And I realized that I was using reading as an excuse to stop doing what I actually wanted to do. And I think a lot of guys fall into this trap where it's really easy to think, oh yeah, I'm reading this book and like that means I'm doing something. And you can sound smart in front of your friends or your coworkers. You can say, oh, have you read so and so book? And I really fell victim to that. I was definitely reading at the expense of taking action, which is a big warning that I give to anybody else who's starting out. That said, the one book I read during that period that stuck with me and really is the only book I've needed since is Psycho-Cybernetics. Psycho-Cybernetics is incredible. It was a Maxwell Maltz was a med, I think he was a plastic surgeon, and he was kind of the second vanguard of self-help. So he came out after Napoleon Hill and those guys, but he was like the next wave in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And the anecdote that he begins the book with was, as a plastic surgeon, he would take guys from World War II who were horribly disfigured from battle. They would have shrapnel in their face or whatever, and he would come in. They would come in to see him to get plastic surgery to hopefully get it fixed. And he would take these guys who were, I mean, I've never been in battle. I have obviously immense respect for people who have, but it's got to just be absolutely traumatizing. And then you compound that trauma with an injury to your face, and so these guys were just broken, and they couldn't, they couldn't go about their daily lives. The way they thought about themselves was completely broken. And what he would do as he fixed their face, he noticed that their entire lives changed. So it wasn't just a superficial injury. What he did was he changed literally what these guys saw when they looked in the mirror. And he changed the way, by extension, he changed the way that they talked to themselves. And so he would have a guy who would come in with a disfiguring facial injury. He would fix it as best as he could. And this guy would be a completely different guy as soon as he was healed and he was ready to go. And so the thoughts, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you see yourself, this sort of germinated in his mind, Maxwell Maltz's mind, that creates your reality. That creates your reality. And if it creates your reality, then it creates your destiny. And so it led him to write this really incredible book that talks about the way that you talk about yourself, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you speak about yourself. These become your self-image. It becomes the story that we say about ourselves, what we think about ourselves. And that in turn creates our entire reality and shapes our entire destiny. And he says, you change a man's face, you change his life. Change a man's face, you change his life. And it's not because his face is different. It's because he's now telling a different story about himself. He's thinking differently about himself. And that first, you read the book, dude, that anecdote comes right at the beginning. And the rest of it, just there's practical exercises you can do to change the way that you're thinking and you're talking about yourself. And what it does is it makes you realize that your brain is kind of a programmable instrument. He calls it a servo mechanism, which I don't think is a term that we use anymore. But your brain is programmable, and the inputs that you give to it, the thoughts that you give to it, it creates a certain goal, and it works toward that goal. And anything negative that we put in is just holding it back. But your brain wants you to get what you focus on. And so it's going to work toward that. So that book completely changed my life. It's the only book I recommend to anybody who asks me, what books do I recommend? Obviously, the Bible is a good one too. But outside of that, in the self-help genre, Psycho-Cybernetics, I could talk all day. I know we want to talk about other stuff, but I could go on all day about that one.
Well, that's one of the most fundamentally important things. So I don't blame you. And it reminds me kind of James Clear, Atomic Habits, talks about basically identifying yourself as a certain type of person rather than focusing on the outcome. So it's not like I think it's outcome-based habits versus identity-based habits, where it's like, I don't want to run 100 miles this week. I want to be a runner. Right. And it's like these things over time, you tell yourself who you are and what you do and how you want to be, essentially. And then you become that through that repetition in your mind. And then once you do that, then you can start sharing with others. Right. Then you can start outpouring from that place and teaching people kind of that progression. You're at 571,000 followers on X now, which is absolutely tremendous. But a lot of people don't realize you've done over 90 episodes of Froggy the Gator, which is a series of children's stories that you deliver as a podcast. And can you talk a little bit about, first of all, the mission of Save Your Sons, the brand, and then how does the podcast play into that?
Yeah. So the mission of Save Your Sons is and always will be to lower the rates of fatherlessness in the world. That's it. I had this realization early on, a long time ago, that from where I sit in Raleigh, North Carolina, the best thing I can do with my particular skill sets and the platform that I'm building is encourage more young men to take that role as a father seriously. Because if we have more fathers in the world, then the rates of crime go down, the rates of addiction go down, the rates of mental illness go down, the rates of violence go down, poverty goes down, education goes up. Everything changes if we have more dads in the house. The statistics are clear. And so everything that I do is to help men, equip men to take on that role, because I know that if I can even affect it 0.5%, but right now it's like anywhere from 30 to 40% of people in the U.S., kids in the U.S. are growing up without a dad in their lives, a dad in the house. If I can change that by 0.25%, a fraction of a percent, that's millions of kids over the course of my lifetime who had the opportunity to have a father in the home, and all those bad social outcomes start to go down because they're less likely to happen if there's a strong man, a strong father in the home. So that is and always will be the mission. And I let that guide everything that I do, every quote monetization thing that I do. I ask myself, am I getting closer to that mission, or am I getting farther away? And so the kids podcast, I think, fits into that really nicely, is because we were talking about at the beginning, the media that kids consume. I was sitting there as a young child sucking down Power Rangers and violent stuff, really frenetic stuff. And then as an adolescent, my parents were great parents. I was lucky in a million different ways when it came to the parents that I had. But I was also sitting in front of MTV Spring Break at 13 years old. and watching the wet t-shirt contests and the foam contests. And that's not good for a kid. That's not good for a kid. And I look around now that I've got two little boys, 3.5 and 1.5. I look around at the media that's available to them. I mean, these freaking things, dude, these phones and the tablets and the on-demand streaming services, the volume of media that's available to them is exponentially higher than it ever was for us growing up. I think you and me are about the same age than it ever was for us growing up. And I sit around, I'm like, well, everything I do, I want to further this mission of helping men so that they're prepared for their role as a father. Well, one thing that really held me back as a young man from taking on that role was a lot of the media that I consumed, because it left me with a twisted self-image and a warped view of the world. It took me years to unravel the damage that a lot of this media did to me. I'm like, well, I'm a content creator. Let's freaking make some content. let's create some stuff. And so I wanted to create an alternative for kids. I think audio stories are an incredible medium for kids. All the bad things about TV and visual go away with an audio format, and all of the good things about TV and visual, which there are some good things, get heightened with audio. So they're learning stories, they're learning language, they're learning lessons that I can put in the shows, but they're also filling in the gaps, and they're using their brains and they're using their imagination. And those are muscles that are ultimately going to help them build their self-image, because the stronger your brain is, the stronger your imagination. Nothing ever existed in the world if it wasn't first imagined by somebody, ever, unless a God created it. But anything that man made was first imagined by somebody. So if you can strengthen that muscle, then the young men and the young women who listen to these things as they grow up are just going to be that much more equipped.
So smart. Like, if you think about it, you say fill in the gaps for the imagination. I think that's such an interesting way to look at it, because I can just picture like a father and his son just sitting and listening to the podcast, and both of their minds are probably going in different places, and they're both developing in interesting ways, especially the child who gets to come up with those visuals on their own. It's just, you're right, it builds that muscle. I want to talk about a different type of muscle. So I'll take you back to August 7th, 2020. This is the day that you created your Twitter account, and you tweeted something out. It says, "Fat boys have fat kids. Send tweet." You literally typed send
Is that
tweet.
my first one? Oh,
It's one of
man.
the first ones. Yeah.
Dude,
First day. And
that's funny.
I know your parents were ahead of the curve with kind of monitoring your screen time as a child. I'm curious what the way you think about balancing our time online with exercise and motion for yourself and also as a parent.
Yeah, it's funny because I had no idea that was the first thing I tweeted. I didn't remember. You could have asked me, I wouldn't have remembered. But that sounds about right. Sounds like something I would say. And today I posted my language has become slightly less crass as I've grappled with the responsibility that comes with having a lot of people listen to what I say, for better or worse. But I actually had a draft tweet today. I wrote something about, you have a duty to your kids to be in good shape or something like that in a long form post. And the first draft was fat parents raise fat kids, and that was today.
That's
I
amazing.
know.
That's
So
amazing,
I
bro.
can't believe you pulled that one out. That's hilarious. For me, so again, I go back to I speak to men primarily because I am a man. I can't pretend to understand the experience that women have, because I've never been one. And I look back to my early 20s, which was for me a really difficult time for a lot of different reasons. Not as difficult as some guys have it. I've always been fortunate in a lot of ways, but it was difficult for me. And one of the first things that ever snapped me out of it, this is something I almost wrote about today too, was when I developed the habit of lifting weights. I did that. So I'd never lifted weights seriously. I played football in high school, but I was not very serious about it. I never developed the habit of lifting weights until I was about 26. So I made it all the way up through my mid 20s as just like a skinny, fat, average guy. And it wasn't until I started that habit that everything else in my life started to open up. And I thought it was really interesting. But since then, I've thought a lot about it. And I think the reason why is because for a lot of guys, I consider lifting weights the gateway drug to self-improvement, the gateway drug to getting the life that you want. And I think the reason why is, for a lot of guys, it's the first time that we ever see our efforts manifesting a visible, noticeable change in our circumstances. Before that, we've never really, I mean, I didn't ever had to study in school. I didn't do any of that. Like, I just made it through. But lifting weights was the first time where I was like, oh, I look better now. And I did that. That was for me. And so it opens up this entire world for young men, especially, of like, I wonder what else is possible. And it opens up entrepreneurship, it opens up relationships, it opens up fatherhood, because you start to realize, oh, I did these actions repeatedly, day in and day out, and it had this change in my life. It had this noticeable, visible change for me. This is why I think it's so important. And lifting weights specifically, a lot of I tweet that or post that, and people will be like, well, you don't have to lift weights, you can do other forms of exercise. And I say, no, you can do other forms of exercise, but literally actually lifting weights and trying to build muscle as a man is one of the most important things you can do, for the reasons that I just said. But to answer your question, it's become, it was so foundational to me as the man that I became and that I'm becoming every single day, that it simply became a non-negotiable. It was, if I'm walking and I'm breathing and I can move any muscles, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do it as frequently as I possibly can. And I haven't, since I was 26, I don't think I've missed more than a week in a row of lifting. And that's 11 years now. And it's just because it was that foundational and that important to me. And the way I think about it with kids is, yeah, I spend about an hour a day exercising, which is good. It's pretty good. I'm fortunate to be able to do that because of the business that I run. I don't have to go sit in an office building every day. But the the way I think about it is, doing that allows me to do everything else. So I wouldn't be the dad that I am if I wasn't exercising. I wouldn't have the business that I have if I wasn't exercising. I wouldn't have the marriage that I have if I wasn't exercising. That time I allow myself to be selfish, because I know that it's actually the least selfish thing I can do. It's selfless, because it allows me to be the husband, the father, and the leader that I have to be.
So much good stuff there. I'm much more of a late bloomer in this sense, where I've had like spurts in and out of the gym, but I never really took it seriously until this past year. And then even more recently, maybe over the last like 6 weeks, I was slacking a little bit and I immediately felt it and I had to jump back in the gym. And it's like becomes this really healthy addiction, because you do see all that positive overflow and all the other aspects of your life, your business, your relationships, your self-image, everything moves forward when you're exercising, and everybody knows it, but then you just get a little lazy, or maybe you start seeing the effects and you're like, okay, I'm gonna chill here for a bit. And then you immediately realize, no, this is forever. And it goes to some of these life lessons. I'm looking at your pinned tweet, says 20 life lessons every father must teach his son, right? And I go down to number 19, and it's find a fraternity. It's this idea that you need other men in your life, and that's really important. And I know when you first started on X, you'd surrounded yourself with guys like Dan Coe and JK Molina and Aaron Will, a lot of these big time guys. Now, along with yourself, you all kind of push forward to that next and even next level, workshopping each other's tweets, stuff like that. How important was it for you as a small creator to kind of have that group around you and help each other grow?
Oh man, it's the number one piece of advice that I give to every single person starting out, because let's be real, it's so easy to get isolated doing this stuff that we do. Like we work by definition by ourselves. Right. I mean, there's new mediums that are arising, like spaces that kind of bring people together. But at the end of the day, if you're a creator, you're by yourself. You're putting your head down. And you're like, I'm gonna record this video. I'm gonna write this video. I'm gonna write this script, and I'm gonna say it, or I'm gonna make this course, whatever it is. You're doing that stuff by yourself, and that's okay. But where a network is, the term I use, for lack of a better word, friends is probably the best word. Where those come in is on those days where you don't want to do it anymore. And or you get, like, you post something and it's bad, and like you get terrible feedback, and like the people come in and the haters come in and they're like dunking on you all day long, and you're like, this. Like, I don't need this. That's when the network becomes really important. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have a place to go that's not on the X timeline or on Instagram or wherever it is that you're working, and you don't have a place to go where you can blow off that steam and have other guys that can lift you back up, then eventually on one of those bad days, it's going to be your last day. It's going to be it, and you're going to quit. And the only surefire way to fail is to quit. So if you quit, it's over. But having that network, then I have it now. Having friends, then having them now has given me that outlet. It's given me a place to go. The other thing that it really, really does that's important is if you have the right people around you, then you're going to be with really smart people who are also successful. And you mentioned Dan and JK and Aaron. It's funny, dude. If anybody listening to this wants a trip, I think I was on Dan Coe's podcast like 2 years ago, which I think is still up. So you can search. After you listen to this one, you can go search and listen to my proto. I think we both might have had 10,000 or less followers at that point in time. But it's funny to go back and listen to that. But what happens is if you're around the right people, then you allow yourself to get obsessed with how all this works. And that's a really key piece. I still spend hours and hours and hours thinking about testing how's this algorithm working today. I mean, the X algorithm, we could talk about it all day long. It changes every freaking 5 minutes. And that's something that I spend a ton of time thinking about and working on because it's a big part of my business. My business relies on scale and size and gravity of a large following. I can't afford to slow that down. And getting around the right people they're going to help you level up in the right areas. So that you're going to talk about how to build a business. You're not going to talk about the Eagles versus the Cowboys. You're going to talk about how do I make more money? What am I doing wrong? What are you doing right? What's working for you? What isn't working for me? And those are the types of friends that you need on the days when you want to quit, and then on the days where you're like, I need to figure out what's next. I need to level up. The right circle will help you do that.
Yeah, I think you make a great point with a couple of things there. As a big account, you're still watching very closely how the algorithm works, how you can push. It kind of reminds me of what I just said with the gym. It's like maybe you reach a certain point and then you kind of cruise and it's like, well, you're going to get left in the dust, right? And so that's setting a great example, I think, for smaller creators to stay on point. And as far as the network goes, you also touch on something that I've been talking about a lot as well, which is this is a long game and you're inevitably going to hit these roadblocks, these speed bumps, and these shitty days where you just don't want to do it, or you put out content for a week and something's off. And you need those people that you can just lean on. You can ask for advice. You can be like, what's working for you? You can go in a space and let some steam off. And you just have these people that have your back. And if you really believe in personal brand as the future of business, as the future of personal development, whatever you're using this for, as most people, as particularly in our corners of Twitter, say they do, it's like, this is a 10, 20, 30-year game. This is a lifelong game. You need to have those people around you to lean on because not everything's going to be perfect. One of the great places you can do that is in a cohort, for example. And I know you help out with, Create, Publish, Profit. And there, for anyone that doesn't know, a cohort is a community-based course. So you're basically going through a course, in this case, learning how to, get your business going on X. And I'm curious, some people have been talking about cohorts are getting a little oversaturated and there's some naysayers. Are you sensing any fatigue in that sort of business model, or do you think cohorts will be around years from now?
I think they'll always be around because what they really are is like an extension of a digital classroom. And that's been a model in education for hundreds of years now. May or may not be the best model today in person with how the state of public schools and universities, but it's been proven resilient. And the reason it's resilient is because the main drawback with a cohort style of delivery is you're not going to get the really close attention from the quote expert, the teacher, and then you're not going to be able to work at your own pace. So those are two serious real drawbacks that make a difference. But the benefit that you get with a cohort-based delivery is the community. And that, like, dude, we were just talking about, with having the right network and having the right people around you, you sign up for one of these cohorts, and there's a ton of good ones that help you learn how to build and monetize a business online, or build and monetize a brand online. You're getting a ready-made set, a ready-made network of people who take this as seriously as you do, as proven by the fact that they signed up and went through this freaking cohort. And that's such a valuable piece that I think gets overlooked, is that it's the best way to find, dude, my voice is cracking a lot. It's the best way. I went through puberty years ago, I promise. It's the best way to find that group of people who are going to be your network, your 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 safety net for those days when you're like, I don't do this anymore. You can find those in a cohort in a much more efficient and effective way.
You also do these men's retreats once or twice a year, which is another way for people to kind of come together and support each other through this process. These guys are all trying to build online businesses, and you kind of help them with that in person. How are you looking at the like online to offline business model? Is that something that you see kind of accelerating as people build up more authority online and bring people together in the real world?
Yeah, I think it's an incredible lever that I think when you got to kind of get to that point to where it starts making sense. But there's always going to be a certain segment of people who want more. That's an important thing to think about if you're doing a digital business, is if 5% of your audience will pay you $200, well, there's probably a tenth of a percent of your audience who will pay you $2,000. And there's probably a tenth of that who will pay you $20,000 for the solution that you're offering to them. And that's not how much my retreats cost, by the way. But there's people who always want more, and why the heck wouldn't I give that to them? And the retreat, we did one in February, we're doing another one soon, was absolutely eye-opening to me, and the progress that guys made. Because we had guys come in at all different levels. At the highest level, there were guys that were already at $1 million a year. At the lowest level, there were guys that didn't even know what they were going to sell. And every single person came out of that retreat farther along with more money to be made just by virtue of being there. And it was beautiful to see. It was one of the most gratifying things I've ever done in my online business journey. I mean, we had a guy who, a good buddy of mine now, who I knew a little bit before the retreat, but now consider a friend, who came in and he like couldn't grow, he couldn't sell his services, and with a couple simple tweaks, I was able to say, here, this is how you need to think about your content. This is how you need to think about how you're positioning yourself. And with a couple simple tweaks, Andy's my business partner on it. Andy was able to say, this is how you sell it. Let's construct the offer this way. And he goes home, and the next month, so this was in February, in March, he sold $10,000, and he had never sold that much before. And that kind of result was just why I do this. I mean, he's a dad, he has a ton of kids and a family to support. So seeing him be able to do that was incredibly gratifying. And it's something that I think will go, a lot more people are going to start doing it, because there's always going to be that desire for more. There's always going to be that desire to be with people in person. And the way I think about it is, I always hesitate to give this example, because I'm not comparing myself to Warren Buffett at all. But this helped me when I was trying to think of, like, how do I lead this thing? Because I was in the cohort mindset. I was like, let me make lessons, let me make presentations, keynote speeches, and I'm going to have PowerPoints and slides. And Andy actually asked me this question. And this, if you feel like this applies to you and what you can teach, it might be a good signal that you're ready for this type of model, this type of retreat model. But he said, you're sitting here thinking about all of these presentations that you want to do, and all of these like little mini courses that you're going to walk our guys through. He's like, what would be more valuable to you? If you went to a 3-day summit and you listened to Warren Buffett give speeches all day, or if you went to a 3-day summit where you could ask Warren Buffett any question you wanted anytime. And as soon as he said that, I was like, obviously, I want to ask him I want to ask him a million questions. I want to ask him questions all day long. He's like, exactly. So that's the format that we went with for the retreat, just letting guys come to us. What are your problems? And we work through them in real time with everybody else there, and everybody got better together.
It's amazing, and it's better for you. It's easier. You just get to show up, be yourself, use your knowledge. You don't have to put together all that stuff. I'm sure you had some preparation, but it just seems a little bit lower hanging fruit for everybody, and more authentic, more organic, more focused. And I think focus is really, really important. And I just, you touched on a few things that I've heard you say in the past is kind of like your top 3 tips, and you've already touched on all of them in this podcast. So that's a testament to your consistency. But they were: number 1, get obsessed. Number 2, network with other people your size. And number 3, pay attention to what other creators are doing. Which of those do you think is kind of the most important for a creator that's just getting started?
Oh, definitely. Dude, I need to like drink some water or something. I don't know what's going on. Spindrift. I'm not being sponsored by them. I'm not. I will allow myself to be sponsored by them if they want to give me a call. But I represent these guys till.
I'll take a cut for this
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. Where's the Spindrift affiliate link? I probably spend $200 a month on this crap. The network by far, man. It is because the other things come with it. It's upstream of everything. Like you can't have that level, like that level of obsession is going to be worthless if you're doing it in a vacuum, because eventually you're going to hit a wall. Eventually things are going to change too quickly, and it'll be really inefficient for you to try to keep up, versus you could just ask one of your friends what they're seeing. So that and then paying attention to other creators becomes way easier when you expand it, and you say, well, it's not just one of me paying attention, there's 10 of us paying attention now, and real time they're like, hey, did you see this, did you see that, this is really working, let's reverse engineer why. So without that first piece, it's going to be really, really hard. I don't know anybody who, and I know a lot of people who do this for a living. I don't know a single person who is completely on an island. I don't. I don't know a single person who never talks to other content creators. I don't know a successful person who's built a business around this quote creator creator niche that we all talk about, who isn't in constant contact with other people who are doing the same thing. And it makes sense, because like great lawyers hang out with great lawyers, great NBA players hang out with other NBA players, even great golfers, they've got their coaches and their caddies and people around them. And it's just the same thing with this. To succeed on an island, I'm not saying it's impossible, but the odds are way, way lower, and it's not an odds game that I would want to play.
And it's certainly not as fun either. It's just great to have friends, around you. And it's interesting you say this, because I'm a spaces coach. I make most of my living right now teaching people how to build authority and build community and build their network through spaces and their audience, right? And the network part of it is so interesting, because one of my clients now, I've had guys come in and they're actual like real experts at things. And it's like, okay, how do we format this show and drive people in and get you talking about stuff that you can dominate and help people with, and your offer, and let's go. And then you have people who are like, who am I in this market? I'm a smart guy. I'm a well-spoken guy, but I don't really know what I want to bring to the table. And I'm like, listen, I just had this conversation yesterday with him. I'm like, listen, let's spend these first 30 days and we're going to use spaces purely for networking purposes. We're going to get you in circles of other creators your size that you can lean on, that you can get in Telegram groups and talk to, that you can trade ideas with, you can become friends with. Because yeah, everyone wants to rush to monetize and to do all this stuff and build your solopreneur business, whatever. But if you don't have the people around you, then you're kind of, you're going to hit a wall. And so taking that step back and realizing that that is a real fundamental building block, and really, obviously I'm biased, but I think spaces is a great way to kind of escalate in a community sense. I want to kind of shift a little bit. I know you have this Fatherize account at Get Fatherized, and it's $1,000 a month to create a verified organization, right? You get this little black badge on there, and the Save Your Sons account has the black badge. You can have like the affiliates for the account and stuff like that. What's the difference between Fatherize and Save Your Sons? And what's your goal with it on X? And why did you pay for the verification?
I paid for the verification because I'm a total custy, and anything Elon Musk comes out with, I just buy. Except, well, I don't have a Tesla. I'm waiting for the Cybertruck. I'm gonna get a Cybertruck. No, I bought it because it freaking works. So I've said I'm obsessed with analytics and like paying attention to how things move, how things go viral, and how things reach new people. And when you have the gold badge, the verified org badge, you're able to your views go up at a much faster rate relative to the rest of your engagement, to keep it, I think, simple. So you're able to just basically reach way more people because you're basically paying for that extra juice. And so I got it because I was curious, and I was like, see what this thing is, and I immediately saw it working. I mean, that account's grown 23,000 in a month and a half, and it was at zero. And that, I mean, it helps that I can kind of already have some traction in that sort of niche, but it would have grown that fast without the gold tick. But in terms of how Save Your Sons and Fatherize are different. The Save Your Sons I think of as much more as as kind of like a lessons for men and things that I want my sons to know. Get Fatherized is much more grounded in actionable parenting tips and strategies. So I think one of the main things that holds dads back is that they feel like they don't know what they're doing. They hold most of us when we have our first kid is the first time we've ever even held a baby. I know it was for me, and so I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to be around a baby. I had no idea how to be a dad while also being a man, and not feeling like I was doing like all this crap that people say like women should be doing the child rearing. No, screw that. Men should play an active role from day freaking one. And so what I'm trying to give people with Father Eyes is real strategies that I've used with my own kids to help them get along in the world, and real actionable parenting stuff. So you'll see that differentiation in the content. And the other thing that brand is attached with is something that I'm working on really hard behind the scenes that I hope to launch before Black Friday. But it's ultimately a place where new dads can go, and I think of Fatherize, it's like productize. It's a verb. Become a father, become the dad, and that's what I want it to teach people. And so what I'm working on now serves new dads, recent dads, or maybe dads who want a kind of a reset. Maybe their kids are a little older, but they know they hadn't been doing what they're supposed to be doing. The Fatherize community that I'm building is for them especially.
That's super cool. So you're kind of like niching down almost, where it's like one is like, here's like broad kind of like philosophy of fatherhood, and one's like, here's how you do it step by step. Building a separate business around that, super cool. And is the badge? I think I heard you in AOP talking about it in the space. Is it like kind of like double the impressions? Like, do you know like what the number feels like in terms of accelerated impressions?
It's hard to say because there's so many other factors that play into the only thing that matters. I just did a module on this actually for CPP, so I'll share some of that with you. Is that the only thing that really matters in terms of how the distribution that your content gets is views per hour, is how I think about it. So like the post I put up today, like I used to measure like likes relative to views and think that if something has low views relative to likes, that means a greater percentage of people engaged with it, so it had a higher engagement rate, and that would help push it out. That no longer applies. Doesn't matter. All that matters is how fast your views are going, and how fast they're going is completely a function of how long are people spending with your content. So how long are they reading it? How long are they watching any attached media? How long are they commenting? How long are they responding to comments? How long are they reading comments? Imagine there's a stopwatch that starts ticking the second somebody sees your post, and it stops ticking the second they scroll past it. The longer that stopwatch ticks, you're getting pushed. You're getting push, 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 push. So it's hard for me to say the gold tick 2x's you. I think I've heard that. I don't know if that's true. I think it helps people at the very beginning get that quick distribution. So like if you have one follower on X right now, in order for other people who don't follow you to see your content, you would have to post something and that one follower would have to see your post and spend enough time engaging on it that it would then get shown to somebody else. So if you have one follower on X and your one follower scrolls past your content, you'll get one view. But if you have one follower and that one follower spends a minute and a half reading what you wrote and looking at the video you posted, then the algorithm's going to say, okay, I'm going to show this to new people. And that's how you grow. And I think what the gold tick does is it just gives you a bigger starting point. So it'll say, instead of, if you have one follower with a gold tick, it might give you to 10 people right at the beginning. But the content still has to be good. The stopwatch still has to run for a long time. And if it's not running for a long time, this is why meme accounts are struggling so hard right now, because people engage with memes for a second or less. They see it, they might mash like, but then they're scrolling right past it. They're not reading the comments. They're not reading there's no content to read. And so meme accounts are just getting smashed. And I saw a meme account with a gold tick the other day, and all they did was post memes with no additional content. And they were getting no views, almost less views than they had followers on average for their posts. And it's because the content still has to drive the stopwatch. The stopwatch still has to spin. And if the stopwatch isn't spinning, it doesn't matter how many gold ticks you have, how many badges you have. You're never going to grow.
Yeah. So in other words, it's your belief that the goal, so if it's total watch time is what drives the algorithm, by showing it to more people sooner, you get that higher amount of seconds or minutes being spent just by pure volume. And so therefore it can potentially get traction earlier. That's interesting. And that kind of leads me into something I noticed on your feed, that particularly this last week, you're really crushing it with the long tweets. You're writing a lot more stories and more long form. Anything with the show more button is what I'm considering a long tweet here. And that has to do with this time spent per tweet as well. And that's on top of the fact that, personal stories, more expansive stories, things like that really draw people in, create emotion in a way that maybe a short tweet or even a meme can't really do. It leans into the metric and it leans into the psychology. How are you thinking about the long tweets, and how are you balancing them with the memes that you do post?
I'll never post another meme. Exclusive. Exclusive for you, Greg. Yeah, no, because they're pointless. Okay, I'll post one if I really like it, but I never will post one expecting it to help me grow. Not now, not until something changes, because that's just not how it works right now.
When did you decide that?
The last couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. It does. Dude, I could post a meme that got 10,000 likes. It would probably get 50,000 impressions, which is terrible.
Your long tweets are getting hundreds of thousands every time, easy, and millions. Yeah.
Yeah, every single time. And the reason is because people are spending more time with it. That is the only thing X cares about right now, because it's the only thing they can sell to advertisers is the user attention. And what does Elon Musk call it? The non-regretted user minutes or whatever. It's the longer that people spend with your stuff, that incentivizes the algorithm to push it out to more people, because that's what they need. It doesn't matter if people mash like all day long. Likes are basically don't even register with the algorithm anymore. I mean, they barely give you anything, whereas they used to give you significant push. I think today it's 0.001% more. A like will do that versus if somebody sits there and reads your stuff for a minute, dude, you're going to the moon. It doesn't matter how many followers you start with if you're capturing attention that well.
Yeah, it's also the comment game too. The comments, I think, weigh a little bit more just on the actual functionality, but also the more comments you get, the more time people spend in there reading the comments. And there you go again with the watch time. So it's this kind of compounding effect with getting people involved in your stories and in the conversation that you're creating around this as a social app. I look at some of the other apps that you're also creating on. You have 200,000 on Instagram or just about. So advanced congrats on that.
Man, I gotta get over.
I think you're at 199.2 right now. So we're close. 30K on Facebook, which I'm not surprised. And how are you sourcing this content? Like, and are you repurposing a lot, or is like what? And more importantly, I think for some people listening is like, at what stage should people think about expanding onto new platforms? When does that enter the equation?
Ooh, that's a good question. As far as where I I mean, most content I write, like if you go on my Facebook, every other post recently, especially, is something I wrote. I think written content is making a strong comeback across platforms, and I'm seeing that on Facebook. I'm seeing that on X, especially. So I've been writing a lot more. I've always loved writing, and it's I stopped doing it for a while because it wasn't being incentivized. And for a while on X, or what was in Twitter, like all that mattered was how many likes can you get relative to your impressions. That's how you went viral. That no longer is the case. And written word is making a strong comeback, and it's always been a strength of mine. And so I'm leveraging that as much as I can now. But then if it is a meme that I post, if it's one I made, there's usually my little watermark in there. If it's not one I made, then obviously it won't have my watermark. And then I just have a rule. I post them if I see a meme that I want to post, I post it how I found it. I don't edit it or change it. That means if there's somebody else's signature or watermark in there, that's great. I want them to get as much credit as I can. And if it's a video or something that's like even more kind of personal, I'll try to get permission of the people that are in it if I can, and I'll try to tag them as the original source of that video. There's a couple little rules I try to follow. Then your next question was, when is the right time to branch out? My answer to that, honestly, is the first thing you should do is pick one platform, get good on that, and X is probably the best one to start with. That's where I would tell anyone to start. And then before you go to a different platform, start an email list. That's more important than trying to go across any other platform. And then as far as what, like after that, after you're humming on X, you're deplatforming some of those X followers to your email list. When do I go to a new platform? For me, it was a really simple equation. It was, am I embarrassed if people look for me on Instagram and I've got 5 followers? Like, is that hurting me? Does that make me look less legitimate? Is it weird if I have 100,000 on X and somebody goes on my Facebook and I've got 400 followers? And so when I started having those thoughts, it took a while. It wasn't at the beginning. You're not thinking that way at the beginning. But when I started like being like, oh, this is like actually tens of millions of people are aware of Save Your Sons just by virtue of the views that I get. I know that tens of millions of people are at least somewhat aware of the brand that I've created. Is it look weird if I'm only on one platform? Yeah, it does. And I don't want people going to Facebook and seeing either not finding me at all, which would actually be better than if they went there and saw me and I had like 100 followers, because then they'd be like, what is going on with this guy? So there's no right time. I think the best thing people can do is just ask themselves that honest question: am I holding myself back by only being on one platform? If so, repurpose your content in a way that suits the other platform. If not, then don't waste your time. Double down on what you're doing that's working.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So I'm following the roadmap, it seems. I'm building on X. That's pretty much where I have my audience. I've been deplatforming onto email over the last few months. That's going pretty well. I just sent out today. This is the first week I'm now sending multiple emails per week. So I'm eventually want to get up to daily is the goal. Yeah, by the end of the year, maybe sooner. And then I guess, yeah, that's an interesting way you put it, where it's like, am I harming myself by looking like I'm, I don't know, not capable enough, or I'm not good enough to like get other platforms going? At what point does that hurt my business? That's an interesting way to frame it. I've never heard it like that. So, you know, where you're at right now, you're one of the most influential accounts on X. You're doing more video podcasts like this. Your face and your name have been out there. Will you start building a personal brand for Harrison? And what are you most excited about overall with your brands over the next 6 to 12 months?
Oh man. I think I've always said, people ask me all the time, like, why are you anonymous? And you've heard me say this before, Greg, on spaces and stuff, but like, I think it's such a stupid false dichotomy. Like, it's not anon versus non-anon. That's like playing in such a tiny sandbox. You're playing with like it's like kindergarten rules. Like that's not how business has ever worked. What you have, the options are not a non versus non a non. The options are a brand or a personal brand. And Coca-Cola is a brand. Nike is a brand. Starbucks is a brand. I'm am I only listing canceled brands? Forgive me. Who are some cool base brands? Costco. I don't freaking know. Those are brands. The CEO isn't on their Twitter account, on their X account, being like, "Hey guys, it's me, CEO of Coke." Like that's not what's happening. That's not what it is. And for me, I've never consciously built Save Your Sons as my personal brand. It has always been about the message and about the change I want to see in the world. And Save Your Sons is a brand that resonates with people to do that, to help me achieve that. And so the only way that I'll be more out front is if I think it'll help serve that mission. And so is there going to be at Harrison SYS X account? Probably not. Probably not anytime soon. But I will be more public now because that's what the brand needs. Where I'm at in the stage of the business, I see myself as the steward of this brand right now. I happen to be the person who created it, and right now I'm stewarding it. And whatever I do is going to be in service of the brand and the mission that the brand has, which is to lower the rates of fatherlessness around the world. And if I need to be more public in order to do that, which right now I believe I do, I'll be freaking public. Now, I also I'm a really private guy. Like I do not look forward to, so far this has never happened to me. I'm sure it will at some point. Like I would hate to be shopping at the grocery store with my kids and somebody walk up to me and be like, I saw you on the podcast. Like that'd be like my nightmare. So that's part of the reason that I've also sort of consciously not been extremely public facing. But that gets trumped if I need to be out there. And right now I do need to be out there and to take this where it needs to go. And if that ever changes, then I go back to living under a rock. I'd be just as happy doing that.
Well, I think whatever you do is going to be amazing, man. It's been really cool getting to know you and just digging into your story a bit and seeing how fast you've grown. I love the mission. It's so awesome, especially with, frankly, we're not going to get into this today, but kind of like I feel like there's a bit of an attack on men in some sense to keep society a little divided, and you don't want too many strong men, and you're just a little bit, right? And we're saying, you're saying raise strong sons, be strong fathers. I think it's an incredible message. I admire your humility, at the level you're at and the way that you've engaged with. The second we connected, you've been engaging with my content. Every tweet, you're liking it, you're jumping in spaces, you're easy to access. I love that about you, man. I'm super grateful that you came on the show. So I'd love to just give you the opportunity to, promote anything that you have going on that you're excited about, and maybe if you have a word of encouragement for the audience.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, Greg, dude, like I try to be available, but I also just freaking can't answer every single message that I get. I just can't do it. But hopefully I never turn into like a hotshot big timer who's annoying, like Ja Rule. You heard stories about Ja Rule? He's like the biggest a-hole of all time.
Ja Rule catching strays on the louder pod.
Come on, man. That's what I was really going on this for, is just start beef with Ja Rule.
Yeah, that's right.
But I say that because I don't even consider myself anywhere like one of those people, and I hope I never will. Because hopefully if he ever hears that, he's like, who is this guy? I don't care. Because that's what I want people to think about me. But Greg, I made time for you because it was really clear what you were doing was cool and different. And the way that you approach the medium of spaces, I got on your space a couple weeks ago, and I was like, this is like a freaking party, dude. It was like a show. And that's what it has to be. It has to be a show. It can't just be dudes up there like twiddling their thumbs, taking a couple questions. It has to be good. And that's what people miss. You got to make stuff that's freaking good. At the end of the day, we could talk about algorithms and total second view time and your views relative to your engagement. What matters is if it's good. That's what matters. And the podcasts have to be good. The shows have to be good. The content has to be good to do anything else that you want to do. You can't half-ass that part. You can't make crap. You can't make. This is maybe my word of encouragement is is make your stuff freaking good, man. And the only way to do that is through practice and through paying attention. So practice, get like it's anything else as part of your business is practice this thing, practice this skill of putting stuff out, of creating, of making stuff that people want to read or want to watch, want to listen to. And the other thing is freaking watch. Watch like a hawk. Watch. I watched. That's why I talked to you. I was like, this dude, I like he's doing spaces right. In my head, like before I met you, I would get on a space and like, this is not right. This isn't how it should be. And then I heard yours. I was like, this is right. This is the way it needs to be. And that's because that's one of the things I've always done is watch other people and pay attention to what they're doing. And that gives you the reps to get good and make stuff that's good. But you're also learning from other people either directly or by osmosis, and you're able to implement the things that work for them in a way that makes sense for you.
I appreciate the kind words, man. It means a lot coming from you. I'm a huge fan, and just want to thank you again for taking the time to come on, Harrison. We'll talk soon, man.
Hey, bro, this is fun. Hey, Google Froggy the Gator. That's my plug. Google Froggy the Gator. Just go Google it. And if you're listening to this, go Google it and follow the podcast. Whatever you Google it, everything will show up. You can go follow it on your platform of choice. Give us a review, 5 stars.
It's in the description, guys. Check it out. Harrison, thanks a lot, buddy.
All right, bro.